The staircase you have seen is called La Beata, Paris Pessa, which translates to Beautiful Princess. Everyone who sees this staircase is certain that the water nymph depicted on it is graceful and very lifelike. Until 1998, someone purchased this staircase for $21,800 at an auction house in New York City. In 2008, the same individual sold it at the same price to Troppy Tove Silverman, a Canadian journalist and art collector living in Paris. After the staircase came into existence, the Paris Art Laboratory conducted tests on it and made a startling discovery. They found a fingerprint on the staircase that closely resembled a fingerprint on a staircase by Leonardo da Vinci, named Salvator Mundi, meaning Savior of the World, typical of the Renaissance era. Moreover, infrared examination revealed that this staircase closely resembled another staircase, housed in the Louvre, attributed to Leonardo da Vinci, especially in the depiction of the water nymph's face. Museum officials believe that the skillful portrayal of the beautiful princess nymph indicated Leonardo da Vinci's hand, as he was a master of hand painting. Many art historians argued that this staircase was indeed the work of Leonardo da Vinci. Naturally, the estimated value of this staircase immediately skyrocketed to $100 million, and if it were to be auctioned, the actual price could be even higher. The person who acquired this staircase proudly declared that it was the companion piece to Leonardo da Vinci's work, the first in his collection. During the forging process, the forger used colored pencils and wax crayons on paper, mimicking the techniques of the time, which made the forgery very convincing. This caused quite a stir among art scholars at the time, and the laboratory also had sophisticated equipment to detect forgeries. Sometime later, this staircase was featured in articles worldwide. However, in 2015, everything changed. A British individual suddenly announced to the World Weekly that the beautiful princess staircase was not the work of Leonardo da Vinci but a forgery by him. This person's name is Saul Greenough, a skilled forger whose creativity extends to various fields such as painting, sculpture, jewelry forgery, and many others. This statement by Saul Greenough caused a sensation in the art world, so whether the beautiful princess is a valuable work of art or not has become a subject of heated debate. To answer this question, we need to find out who Saul Greenough is and what connection he has to this staircase. The story begins on June 21, 1900, when Saul Greenough was born in Bolton, England. From a young age, he began learning to draw and carve wood. Saul Greenough had a passionate interest in art. He enjoyed browsing antique shops and visiting flea markets to collect rare finds. By the age of 11, Saul had already surpassed his peers in woodworking. By the time he was 13, he was taking his hand-carved pipes from his backyard to sell at flea markets. At this point, he told others that they were heads excavated from a junkyard, discarded during the Victorian era. Not far from this, he made some money. Apart from strolling in flea markets, Rainhow also enjoyed reading catalogs and looking at price lists. He liked wandering in museums, and on his first visit to the British Museum, he was mesmerized by Egyptian culture. So he shifted from studying sculpture to stone carving, diving headfirst into his own passion for art. During high school, Rainhow, relentlessly self-taught, progressed rapidly, refining his painting techniques. His father enjoyed painting birds, but according to Rainhow, his father's paintings were technically proficient but couldn't be considered art. In his last 2 years of high school, he still believed that high school only covered basic painting, and he wasn't interested in obtaining any art degrees. So he decided to learn on his own. At that time, he was only 15 years old. After self-study, he had leisure time and went on vacation with his family to Rome. They visited churches, palaces, and museums and explored as much as possible. This was the first time the young Rainhow got to see paintings on religious altars with his own eyes. After returning home, Rainhow participated in an art exchange with the Tate Gallery, the National Gallery, and the British Museum. Some of Rainhow's paintings were featured. Sir Charles, who had served as the head of the Tate Gallery and was an art connoisseur, bought one of Rainhow's paintings for £20. Although £20 wasn't much, Rainhow was still very happy. And the day after that memorable event, Sir Charles contacted Rainhow, saying he had acquired some paintings by John Lacan and wanted to safely preserve a corner painting but still wanted to display the art for everyone to see. So, he wanted someone to make a copy of another painting to hang on the wall. Then, Sir Charles proposed a price of £400 for the copy, and Rainhow happily agreed. Finally, the copy was completed quickly, and naturally, Sir Charles was pleased with the paintings. This copy was almost perfect, and it could easily be distinguished from the original painting. After being professionally oriented by this copying process, Rainhow had an idea. He wanted to copy works of other famous artists to test his own skills and see if he could recognize the differences. He quickly took action and began studying the works of the famous French painter Eugène Delacroix. Rainhow produced an excellent copy of Delacroix's work. Then, he offered a price for a painting that he believed was the closest to the original. Rainhow even signed the copy as a tribute to Eugène Delacroix. After completion, Rainhow sent a letter requesting an appraisal to the auction house, Stern, in London, accompanying the painting that was copied. After a few weeks, Rainhow received a reply letter. The auction house requested him to bring the painting to their office for assessment. That year, after Rainhow's trick, he felt a little guilty. The purpose of this young man was simply to find out how much money his counterfeit painting could fetch. The next day, when Rainhow took the counterfeit painting to the auction house, the appraiser carefully examined every detail of the painting under a magnifying glass, while Rainhow sat beside him, feeling increasingly tense. In his mind, he pondered what excuse he would use if the person facing him turned out to be a police officer. To his surprise, the appraiser looked at the teenager sitting in front of him and asked, "Where did you get this painting?" Rainhow replied, "I found it while rummaging through stuff at a flea market." Then, the appraiser wanted to inspect the back and asked for permission. For a moment, it seemed like the appraiser was hinting at something suspicious. Could they send this painting to the central office for further examination? At this point, Rainhow felt like the situation had exceeded his intentions. If this counterfeit painting were indeed sent to the central office, there would be many experts there, and the forgery, near Rainhow, would be discovered. But now there was no turning back. The situation had escalated, and Rainhow had to reluctantly agree. More surprisingly, the experts at the central office even believed that this counterfeit painting was the genuine work of Delacroix. It was unbelievable that a mere teenager could forge a work of such a renowned artist. Then, the counterfeit painting by Delacroix was sold to a buyer for £10,000. Rainhow had truly deceived those experts, though he had not intended to do so. Making this amount of money made him feel very happy. However, this joy didn't last long. Rainhow knew it wasn't right, and his conscience felt extremely guilty. So, Rainhow decided not to remain silent anymore. After receiving the £10,000, he returned to his normal life with an unsettled conscience. One day, while Rainhow was reading art history books at the library, Guillaume Dinlen, of Manchester University, he met a part-time librarian. This person quickly became friendly and became friends. They exchanged contact information, and from there, they started dating. Their relationship blossomed. After the holiday ended, they returned home and planned for the next step. However, tragedy struck when the future scene of their lives changed. One day, Zanet started having uncontrollable seizures, and it was diagnosed as an inoperable brain tumor. Several months later, Zanet passed away. In an interview many years later, Rainhow struggled to even recall Zanet's name. He said, "I'm sure that if she were alive, I would have married her." The loss of his beloved was a major shock to Rainhow. And for the next 2 years, he lived in grief and carried out all the plans they had made together. Rainhow adjusted his mindset throughout the journey by visiting Egypt, Greece, and the Roman houses. He visited the Louvre at least 7 times because it ignited his passion for art, a passion he had pursued since childhood. After his last trip to the Louvre, he found a job repairing antiques. He asked the manager if he could create replicas for display, and the manager happily agreed, providing him with a small workshop to work in. The workshop had many tools, and here, Rainhow hastily carved an Egyptian stone sculpture. At that time, An art dealer named Tom happened to visit your antique repair shop and happened to see this stone sculpture. Immediately, Tom expressed interest in buying it for £200. Then, the person below him, an art collector, visited his workshop and was impressed by what he saw. Tom's studio was very famous in London, and Saul Gringo was accepted the invitation. He moved from his hometown of Bolton to London to create replicas for Tom's studio. Initially, Gringo's job was only to create replicas, but then Tom gave him some orders to create customized art pieces for clients. And Tom would create certificates and hide them in these art pieces to make buyers believe they were the pieces they were looking for. After working at Tom's studio for 2 years, Gringo accidentally discovered that the Egyptian statue he had created had been sold as an authentic piece long ago. When Gringo learned of this, he felt indescribable. At Tom's studio, Gringo created 15 works. Since he was 28 years old, Gringo and Tom had argued. The reason was that the 2-month-old wood carvings were lost. Faced with Tom's suspicion, Gringo's dissatisfaction with his work finally erupted. In the output of 15, he created a large number of counterfeit products for Tom to sell at high prices, but Gringo's cash received was very meager. This dispute made him angry, and now he cut off contact with Tom. After avenging, he returned to Bolton and started making counterfeit products alone. Then the paintings of the Impressionist school like Samuel Peploe fetched very high prices. So he painted in oil painting in the style of Peploe, and then Gringo and his father went to London, and his father told a fake story about this painting, saying that this work came from Andy Burr. Gringo's father praised it, and as if he didn't know it was the work of a famous painter, he just asked others what this painting was and if they wanted to buy it. While this might lead art dealers to intentionally negotiate lower prices, Gringo easily understood. Feeling, as painful as it may be, would undermine their rationality. After the ups and downs, he was no longer a naive boy. Gringo just hoped that the buyers would quickly nod and then he would take his money. With the artwork of Peploe being bought by a collector, on the second day, Gringo received a phone call from the police. The reason was that an art dealer, whom they sold that painting to, had passed it on to an esteemed expert, and the result was that this painting was determined to be old. The art dealer could not accept this, so they called the police. After Gringo escorted the police to his home with this painting in his heart, he was worried. But in reality, at that time, the police were overwhelmed with many other cases, and the price that this person had paid for that oil painting was not too high, so this incident was overlooked. Escaping this incident made Gringo more cautious in creating fake art pieces, and he even received support from his family. To increase the credibility of his art pieces, Gringo needed to ensure that there were no issues in the historical records. He not only focused on art pieces but also put special effort into creating counterfeit documents, such as the wills of artists, seals, and similar artifacts. Gringo's father also participated, and his role spread to meeting and dealing with clients. Sometimes even his mother helped. Initially, the sale of artworks was managed by Gringo's older brother. Although he started earning more money, he still lived with his mother in a modest house, which was located in the heart of Bolton. The house had a small workshop where he used as a studio. Usually, he would not create very similar artworks and not deal with high-profile clients, a portion of whom was sold to individual buyers. Their discernment was not very high, and they were easily deceived. He believed that people should buy artworks because of genuine appreciation for them, not because of the signature of a celebrity, or a polite conversation that accompanied it. However, in reality, he noted that the origin of a piece could affect its value and influence. Near Rainhow found that there would always be people willing to believe in the authenticity of fake origins he created, and even when later buyers realized it was fake, they remained silent and did not want to admit they had been deceived. This is how Near Rainhow assessed the naivety and greed of his customers and how he exploited it. In addition to individual buyers, fake artworks created by Near Rainhow were also sold to museums and auction houses, where they were examined very professionally but still managed to deceive the eyes of experts multiple times. At the age of 30, he made a significant amount of money and melted them into a large silver sheet. In the 1000th year, at the age of 30, he liquidated a large amount of money and melted it into a large silver sheet. If the notes at the last up park were to be believed, 200 years ago, people found a massive silver sheet in Last Up Park, and then, it was not known what had happened to it. Amidst the speculation, Near Rainhow had created a silver sheet that closely resembled the original silver sheet. Near Rainhow's father told the museum that this was the family's heirloom that had been passed down, but it had been broken. We found the broken pieces, and then welded them back together. When the museum saw this news, they were delighted, but upon further examination with additional evidence, they found out that the materials used on this plaque came from different historical periods. Therefore, the museum concluded that this silver sheet was a replica, albeit possibly missing the broken pieces of the original corner. Although not officially recognized, the museum stated that it still held historical significance. Subsequently, this plaque, acquired by a private buyer, was sold for £100,000 at a Sotheby auction. With this purchase, the buyer donated the plaque back to the museum in memory of the museum director, who was soon to pass away. Later, this piece was prominently displayed in the museum. In 1900, at the age of 33, he realized that there were many reproductions of Gauguin's paintings, but genuine plaques were very rare. They were not highly priced and had very little research documentation. Therefore, Gwinshaw seized this opportunity and delved deeper into Gauguin's life and other plaques. Among them was a plaque made of wood, believed to be created by Gauguin. Gwinshaw used this plaque as a model to create another wooden plaque measuring 47 centimeters high. This was considered the standard size of the high-quality plaques Gauguin created. Unfortunately, after many years, in 2020 it was confirmed that the attribution of the wooden plaque was not accurate. The reason it was initially thought to be a Gauguin piece was due to the materials listed in Gauguin's diary. The image of this other plaque also appeared in a painting by Gauguin. However, this assumption was proven wrong using modern technology. But it still didn't affect Gwinshaw's forgery of the plaque. The tavern owner explained to their customers how they had this other plaque in their possession. This time, the tavern owner relied on their ancestors' names, Zako and Twin, claiming that she was a servant of an Icelandic painter, Zoderic O'Kona. He was a good friend of Gauguin's family. As for this other plaque, she claimed it was found during a renovation in 1917. Now, legally through inheritance rights, she understood the significance of that other plaque and meticulously fabricated documentation to prove its authenticity. This other plaque was quickly recognized by Sotheby and the Guy Stein Research Institute in Paris. At a Sotheby auction, a plaque considered to be a piece by Gauguin was purchased by a London art dealer for £20,000. This made Near Rainhow very happy, and his forgery business began to thrive. In 1995, a museum employee in England investigated the presence of many plaques in the museum. Purchased from the Sotheby family, he found this quite unusual, but since this plaque had received official recognition from the museum, he didn't question it much and only mentioned that it was from a very wealthy family. The following year, after a plaque was sold at auction, the director of the Chicago Art Institute took a keen interest in this other plaque. Subsequently, the Chicago art director also identified a plaque as Gauguin's work and bought it for $125,000, making it one of the most significant art purchases in 20 years. The plaque was then prominently displayed in the Chicago Art Institute's Central Exhibition Hall and Wooden Art Gallery. And after a while, Sotko by Greenhaw presented a painting in the style of Lorian Lowry, a famous British artist known for his deeply humanistic urban style, but within the painting, the subject was of personal significance. Greenhaw publicly claimed that this painting was a recent acquisition by our family. He even produced what seemed like forged letters stating that some of the paintings, including this one, were gifts from Lorian Lowry. Immediately, a lacquer painting caught attention, titled The Church. It was compared to some works by the Greenhaw family, and Lorian Lowry himself declared it genuine. Eventually, it was auctioned off for £7,000. In 1992, the Greenhaw family embarked on their most ambitious project yet when they wanted to organize an auction in 1992. The venue chosen was the Divine Park, a venue steeped in cultural history, in the city of Divin. This park was believed to belong to a noble family, and as you know, noble families often have a rich artistic heritage. In this auction, there were 8 Egyptian figures mentioned, but the descriptions were vague and without specific names. Furthermore, Egyptian culture was a field that Greenhall was very familiar with, and he recognized a significant opportunity. So, a new plan was set in motion. Greenhall extensively used Egyptian Amarna style from the 350s BC in the park's sculptures and crafted statues of Pharaoh Akhenaten and Nefertiti, along with one of Nefertiti's daughters, with high-quality materials throughout. Then, another statue, 52 centimeters tall, named Princess Amarna, was created. He broke off a part of a statue and coated its surface with a unique mixture of resin and soil to give it an aged appearance. Then, Greenhall felt very confident and took this artwork to an auctioneer's office. The person there initially offered £500 for it, but Greenhall felt his masterpiece was undervalued and immediately declined. The bidder then raised the offer to £1,500, but Greenhall still refused, arguing that the person had no understanding of this artwork. So, he stubbornly refused to sell. Later, this artwork was left in the house until 2002 when Greenhall's son brought the Princess Amarna statue to the Boughton Museum. He recounted a fictional story and claimed that these statues were ones his father had repurchased from an auction at the Divine Park. To add authenticity, he provided experts with forged letters, stating that these items had been forgotten in our family. He played dumb and asked the museum experts, "Is this valuable?" At that time, only 2 statues could be compared to Princess Amarna. Those were the Lou statue and the Boughton statue studied by archaeologists and anthropologists at the university. Pence and Van Musick, being near Rain How, had predicted this and had very few references for experts to consult. So, he executed this forgery to avoid detection. Indeed, as predicted, when the museum's curator in Boughton Park conducted an examination, he scrutinized the back of the statue and believed it had previously been part of an Egyptian couple statue. This style matched the characteristics of that era, so he believed it to be genuine. The appraiser of the ritzy market also evaluated Princess Amarna and declared that it was a genuine and valuable piece worth £500,000. The major museum in England also recognized Princess Amarna, and experts unanimously agreed that this particular artifact held significant importance. In 2003, the Melancholic Museum paid £440,000 to repurchase Princess Amarna from near Rin How, and it was prominently displayed within the museum. It was even protected by additional security measures compared to other exhibits. Moreover, Princess Amarna became near Rin Hao's most successful forgery. To the extent that, in the following years, he didn't produce any new artworks except for auctioning off the initial bids for Pepelot's oil paintings. During his forgery spree, near Rin How encountered 2 instances of police suspicion, but the police deemed them minor incidents and didn't pursue further investigation. By 2006, the truth about near Rin Hao's forgeries had been exposed. That year, as he approached old age, near Rin How devised a new project. He replicated 3 artifacts from the Assyria era of Nadig. One was a majestic bust of the head of the council, or Assyria's cavalryman, atop a horse, and she was the head of the cavalry. As before, the artifacts were traced back to near Rin Hao's family, with a similar story involving Princess Amarna. He claimed that our ancestors had purchased them at the Divine Park auction, and then the British Museum examined these 3 artifacts and confirmed that they were all genuine. The museum immediately made a substantial offer to purchase one of the artifacts because they bore a resemblance to a rare artifact from the Olden Age, which the museum had been collecting. Lai Jia was a respected archaeologist, famous for excavating the Nadig site. Then, the other 2 artifacts were sent to auction houses, but after expert examination, it was concluded that they were counterfeit. The auction houses contacted the British Museum and initiated a re-evaluation of the artifacts they had purchased. As a result, they discovered more anomalies such as mismatched serial numbers on the touched-up sculptures compared to other genuine artifacts and inconsistencies in the materials, like some spelling mistakes on the inscriptions. The museum then alerted the police, as this was a case of art fraud. The police immediately accepted the case and raided near Rin Hao's home on March 15. The scene from the raid astonished the police. Everything in the house seemed ordinary, like a typical household, yet every item was meticulously crafted. In Near Rin Hao's room and workshop, there were sculpting tools, paints, metals, and clay, along with ancient materials like papyrus and unfinished or discarded artworks. Downstairs, there were several oil paintings in various stages of completion. In another room in the garden shed, there were authentic art supplies and stacks of blank paper. Interestingly, the police found 2 copies of the Princess Amana statues. Naturally, one was genuine. Under police interrogation, the Near Rin Hao family couldn't hide their illicit activities. They admitted to forging artworks. It was unbelievable that such sophisticated artworks turned out to be Near Rin Hao's forgeries. The neighbors also reported to the police that they had seen Near Rin Hao burying some items in the garden and had found some antique firearms in the garden shed. They knew that Sugarin Hao was creating some artworks, but they had no idea that all of them were forgeries. The police checked Near Rin Hao's bank records but only found relevant information dating back 6 years. According to Near Rin Hao, he had been forging art for 17 years, imitating styles from various renowned artists like Edgar D. G.A. Odelik, Paul Gowan, Though Matt Moorin, Samuel Panamo, and many others. These artworks had been circulated widely among many people. The police couldn't ascertain the exact amount of money Near Rin Hao had earned. By selling numerous forged artworks, Near Rin Hao had earned a significant income. However, their lifestyle wasn't as extravagant as one might imagine. Most of the earnings were used for basic living expenses, with only a small portion spent on luxuries, including the sale of Princess Amana artworks. Near Rin Hao's family didn't have extravagant spending habits. When they traveled or considered moving elsewhere, they preferred the familiarity of their hometown and chose to live there for the rest of their lives. Apart from miscellaneous items that the police saw in the house, there was only one luxury car worth slightly more. After 20 months of investigation, it was estimated that Near Rin Hao had earned between £850,000 to £1.5 million from forging artworks. In 2002, the case was brought to trial, and Near Rin Hao was charged with forgery and money laundering. In court, the police listed the total proceeds, which included counterfeit artworks such as paintings by famous artists, sculptures, Princess Amana artworks, 3 wood carvings on a tree trunk, and many other items, including silverware from the 10th century, engraved sculptures, and works by various artists. The prosecutor's office pointed out that during the investigation, Near Rin Hao confessed to 128 forgeries, most of which had been sold on the market. It was estimated that if all these items were sold, they could fetch up to £10 million. However, it was likely that Near Rin Hao had produced and sold many more artworks. Finally, the court sentenced Near Rin Hao to 4.5 years in prison. Considering his mother's age of over 80, she was sentenced to 1 year in prison and 2 years of probation. Near Rin Hao's son was sentenced to 2 years in prison and 2 years of probation, and the family's assets were confiscated to cover the damages. The story of Near Rin Hao's art forgery case created a huge sensation. People were utterly astonished when they raided Near Rin Hao's house and found materials, tools, and various artworks. Some said that the true crime in the forgery of artworks not only stemmed from the desire for money but also from an artistic obsession. Although many felt deeply disappointed by this deception, some in the art world recognized Near Rin Hao's craftsmanship as that of an artist. In 2009, a major television network adapted the story into a play and broadcast it live on the show, Antiquaroso, which translates to Keeper of Art Fraud Cases. In prison, Near Rin Hao completely withdrew into his own world, naming it The Forgery of My Heart, My Soul. In 2001, Near Rin Hao turned 50 and was released after an interview. He mentioned his deceased girlfriend and expressed uncertainty about choosing a different path if she were still alive. When asked why he was always so devoted to his mother, art forgery, Near Rin Hao explained that perhaps it was because they felt bored at home. He told the interviewer that he intentionally left small flaws in each artwork to prove that it was his creation. He lectured, stating that as long as there was someone observant, they would notice those mistakes. After serving his prison sentence, Near Rin Hao returned home, and one day, he found a girl's hairpin on the dressing table. Upon closer inspection, there was a secret compartment containing a letter from a historian, expressing admiration. Inside the letter was a wooden statue of a beautiful princess named Victoria. It was believed to be a work by Leonardo da Vinci, and Near Rinhao had revisited it several times. Despite completing the statue of the beautiful princess, Near Rinhao took it to an art dealer to sell, but they only offered £80, dismissing its quality. In 2007, the entire art world recognized it as a masterpiece by Leonardo da Vinci. In 2015, the statue of the beautiful princess was exhibited in Milan, and upon hearing the news, Near Rinhao immediately went there. He looked at it with great pride and confirmed that it was indeed his creation. However, that was no longer important as the world had recognized its significance, a true testament to artistic genius. Although everything he produced was fake, it could still evoke the spirit of Leonardo da Vinci. He was indeed a genius, and through his artistry, one could see his unwavering passion for art in his soul. In conclusion, despite Near Rinhao's fraudulent activities, let us reserve judgment and reflect on the commentary. Farewell, and until we meet again.